This has been a real what the Farage moment this week. Say it ain't so. You're not leaving to go back to frontline politics, are you?
No, what I've said, Dan, is very simple, is that 20 months ago, at the start of lockdown, first week of lockdown, I went down to the Kent-East Sussex borders. I made a video based on information given to me by a number of locals about the sheer number of boats that were landing. Some being picked up by Border Force, others where people just, there we are, there I was, others disappearing into the night. And I was astonished that none of this was being covered by mainstream media. I was appalled that the French Navy were literally escorting migrant boats across the line into British waters where they would get met by either Border Force or the RNLI. No politician was talking about it. No media organisation was talking about it. And I wanted to get a debate going. And do you know what? I did. And I predicted then that unless something happened, this would get worse. I then, at the start again of this year, was back out in the channel. And I said in July, one of my first shows on GBNews, that I thought the number this year would be probably nearly 30,000 that would come. And how they laughed, how they mocked, how the Guardianistas and the very intelligent people on the Times thought this was all completely ridiculous. Well, we're heading rapidly, very close to now, 30,000. And I'm going to say this, Dan, unless something is done radical and very, very quickly, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because these people that are being pushed through by Lukashenko from Belarus, being pushed through the border into Lithuania, into Poland, when they're interviewed, they're not going to Germany. They all want to come here. It's as if there's a huge sign on the White Cliffs of Dover, everyone welcome. And if you think about it, actually it makes sense, doesn't it? You pay your three to 5,000 euros to get on one of those boats. You come to the UK, you're put into a nice private house or 4-star accommodation, free dental care, free health care, 3 square meals a day, £39.53 spending money every week. And you apply for asylum, you get rejected, but you get to stay anyway. And your chance of deportation is less than 0.5%. So unless we do something, this will continue. And my worry is this now. It isn't just the sheer cost every day in the channel. Every day in the channel we see Border Force, RNLI, search and rescue helicopters, drones, Border Force facilities in Dover overwhelmed. It isn't just that. It isn't just the cost of the hotels all over the country. It isn't just even the social problem of how do you integrate so many people who come from completely different religions. And if you want a warning about that, have a look at Malmö in Sweden. No, my worry is much more fundamental. This is now a threat to national security. Think about this number. Of the 4,000 people that have crossed the border into Lithuania this year, the authorities there have done checks. They have discovered 24 young men with direct links to ISIS or Boko Haram.
Terrifying.
If you extrapolate that figure towards the United Kingdom, just how many people this year have we invited in who come from a barbaric ideology that could do us serious harm?
I know.
And the Liverpool bomber is a reminder of somebody the British taxpayer paid for 7 years who lost his asylum claim and yet was allowed to stay in this country. And I want to say this to the government. The first job, Mr. Johnson, of government is to protect the integrity of the country and the safety of its citizens. And you are failing us totally and utterly. And the whole country can now see it. Even, believe it or not, sections of the media have actually woken up to this. And this crisis is so serious.
I know.
But unless something is done, Dan, unless something's done, why would anyone vote Conservative again? Why would you bother to vote Conservative?
Well, no, and you're absolutely right to point out the light that you shone on this months and months and months ago now. And I remember interviewing you about it at the time when I had my show on Talk Radio, and then we had a laser focus on this issue. But the media have been a disgrace. They have looked away time and again. It's still not really leading the news, but it's cut through, and that is thanks to you. But my question to you, Nigel, is after all of the speculation this week, does that make you feel like you're the only man who can actually take the political fight to Boris? Or do you have, and this is obviously what I would argue, Nigel, a big enough platform here on GB News?
No, I think GB News does change the whole dynamic. I think at last to have, a free-to-view television channel with all the associated social media and stories that go with that actually gives us a chance to change the narrative. And so I take my role at GB News incredibly seriously. On the politics of it, what I've said, honestly and openly, is I'm bombarded every day by emails from people saying, please come back into politics. I've had one or two big donors say to me, please come back into politics. But remember, I did do it for 25 years. I did help to achieve a very major historic change in terms of us leaving the European Union. My gut instinct absolutely is not to go back into politics, but I do have to reserve the right. If this was to turn, by this time next year or earlier, into a national emergency, then I reserve the right, if nobody within the Conservative Party has frankly got the backbone or the courage or the will to tackle this issue, then I'm never going to say never. It's not what I want to do. Absolutely not. That chapter of my life, taking on the entirety of the British establishment, it's not an easy thing to do. But I will never say never, because who's to say how bad this gets? So I don't want to, but if I'm absolutely forced to, then I may well.
Well, and I think it's important, Nigel, that the Farage threat, if you like, is in reserve, because it's been fascinating reading the liberal Westminster bubble journalists over the past 24 hours who admit, Nigel, that you remain Boris Johnson's worst nightmare. The thought of you re-entering frontline politics is the thing that keeps senior advisors to Boris Johnson, senior cabinet ministers and Tory party insiders and donors, it's what keeps them up at night.
Yes, I mean, look, I would like Dan to be Boris Johnson's best friend. I would like to, I mean it, I would like to come on GB News at 7 p.m. and night after night say, look at this heap of regulations the government have just got rid of. Hooray for the 6 million small businessmen and women.
The taxes that they've lowered.
I would love to do all of that. I want to make a success of Brexit. I want global Britain to really work. The potential we've got is phenomenal, and it's being blown by a lack of courage and a lack of leadership. And I think I saw something yesterday that I hadn't seen before. I've seen Boris bumble and stumble and make a fool of himself, and he's generally got away with it, and he laughs it off and he moves on. But isn't it funny? When the stand-up comedian, when the jokes stop being funny, when they start to become cringeworthy, and then when he lost his notes and for 30 seconds was all at sea in a visible panic and said, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, Boris 5 years ago would have turned that into the most hilarious little skit. Yesterday, he couldn't do it. And I just, Dan, begin to wonder, is he losing his confidence? And you see this with sportsmen. You see this with businessmen and women. When you lose your confidence, it can be very tough to get it back. So does Boris now have the ability to bounce back from this? And I'm beginning to think that he doesn't. And so I think we're headed for a period of political drift before inevitably he announces he won't run again at the next general election. And this is really a political tragedy for not just for a man who's always wanted the top job. I mean, Gordon Brown was very much in that category too. But it's also a disaster because we've got a Conservative government with a majority of 80. This should be the great, radical, reforming Conservative government, undoing so much of the damage done by the Blair years, done by the European Union. And frankly, Dan, none of it's happening.
Fascinating analysis as ever. Nigel, really appreciate your honesty and, of course, killing it at 7 p.m. on GB News.